Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Caught on the Mic. And of course, joining me for Dynasty Combat Sports Fight Week is my co-host, Kaleb Betzold. He hosts the podcast Sports with Betz, and we've got an exciting episode for you today. Today, we are talking with Hunter Harrison. He is calling in from Colorado. He is going to be on season beating fight card on November 21st at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Hello, Kaleb.
Hey, howdy. How's it going, Mike?
Good. And hello, Hunter. Welcome to the show, my friend.
What's up, guys? Good to be here.
It's a pleasure having you. We are so excited. We were making a list of people we wanted to talk to for the show, and Kaleb suggested you. You were like one of the first people Kaleb suggested.
Well, thanks, Kaleb. Appreciate it, man.
Of course, man. I've been a fan of you for a while. It's rare that we get a guy, especially in amateur MMA, who steps in and looks like you just get it. You know, you're one of those guys that we identified really quickly with that. So you got a fight coming up here, November 21st against Andrew Huffman. First of all, what part of training camp are you in right now, and how are you feeling?
Feeling great. I'm in the part of training camp where we're still ramping up. We'll probably taper off here in the next couple of weeks, but a lot of cage rounds. That's one of the benefits of being at one of the biggest gyms in the U.S. is just you have full cage in there. So get more comfortable, get more rounds, a lot of pro guys, and that helps a ton.
So you mentioned that you were living in Omaha for about 2 years, but you're currently living in Colorado. Is it true? Do you notice a difference with the altitude? Does that affect or help your conditioning at all? Is that legit?
Yeah, I think it's a bigger deal with guys coming up to elevation than it is for me going down. I mean, I think it helps a little bit. But yeah, definitely if you have guys fighting in Colorado that aren't used to it, you gas really quick.
It's funny you bring that up. Zach Pounga, a friend of mine who was on The Ultimate Fighter, he talked about leaving Colorado and going and taking a Cage Warriors fight in San Diego. And he said it was like he almost felt superhuman because he wasn't in the elevation. So he's like, I could breathe. I'm like, my energy, I didn't have to kind of, re-up at all.
Sweet. Yeah, I hope that helps. All these Dagestani guys in the UFC, it makes sense. I mean, they're training in the mountains all the time. So I'll let you know after. How's that?
Well, let's take it a step back. As Kaleb mentioned, you spent 2 years in Omaha working with Skywalker 101's Danny Molina. So tell us about your MMA journey. How did you get into the sport?
Yeah, so when I was little, I was like a little freak. Like I just had way too much energy. My parents tell me stories all the time. Like I'd go to play dates and just like be hitting kids. Not because I was mean or anything. I just had crazy amount of energy. So they put me into karate when I was in San Diego. That's where I grew up for like 10 years. And that just tired me out, got all the discipline, yes sir, no sir, bowing, all the whole 9 yards, right? And so until I was 10, I got my black belt when I was 10, which, at the time you think I could beat anyone in a fight, let's go. And then I started wrestling when I was in middle school. And that was like a rude awakening. I was like, holy cow, I don't know how to punch. I'm punching from my hips. I don't know how to kick right. It's all performative. I mean, I'm not throwing shade at any of the karate guys. I know Steven Thompson, Venom Page, one of my favorites. Those guys are the elite of the elite when it comes to karate. But most karate is just, it's good for discipline, it's good for kids, but not great for fighting. So started the wrestling thing, immediately fell in love, kind of ditched all the other sports. Ended up being, all state in high school, and then decided to wrestle in college for Coach Grinwald. He's a 2-time Olympian in Greco. And after that, I was like, I'm going to go get a big boy job. I got into medical sales, and it was sweet. Newly married, making more money than I knew what to do with. And there was something missing where I was like, okay, if this is just the rest of my life for the next 30 years or whatever, I'm going to go crazy. So found a gym. I stepped into Danny's gym again, kind of thinking all right, man, I wrestled college. I'll be okay. Just got destroyed. I go to sparring. Everybody's putting the pace on me. My wrestling's not doing anything. I'm diving into shots, just doing stupid stuff. And it was definitely a gut check. It was 3 weeks of just dude, do I really want to do this? Maybe I should just go do CrossFit or something, just get super jacked. And yeah. And so after I kind of got over that hump, I fell in love with it. I loved just getting in the cage, like all the practice. That's the hard part. Getting in the cage, like every fighter will tell you this. As soon as you're in there, it's just peace and the adrenaline's flowing. It's awesome. That's kind of what made me fall in love with it. And after training under Danny for a couple of years, I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I got to do it for real. Like I want to make this into a real thing. I don't want to just be an amateur fighter. I don't want to just be a pro fighter. I want to be in the UFC one day. And so in order to make that happen, I need to start training every single day, all day. And so I moved out to Colorado. My brother and I started a little business and made it work.
That's amazing. Like jumping into a place like Skywalker 101 and then going to Factory X and working with Mark. Do you find at any point in this journey up to this moment that you were a little bit starstruck or awestruck by some of the talent you were surrounding yourself with?
Not at first. Like I've never really been, I've been to a couple of UFC events. And it's cool seeing guys in the elevator. Like we saw Volkov in the elevator. I'm like, dude, that guy's freaking huge. like things like that, right? You don't understand how big these dudes are. But I was never like, oh my gosh, can I get your autograph? Can I get a picture with you? Like, it's just not really my style. And so the starstruck part was like meeting guys that either aren't in the UFC yet or were previously in the UFC and didn't make it work and they're still just beating the crap out of you. That is the humbling part where you're like, that's the starstruck part where you're like, okay, I have so much further to go because these guys are just piecing me up and then out wrestling me because they're striking so much better and they can flow into it that I'm like, all right, I need to like put in some serious work here.
So obviously to have any sort of success in this sport, you've got to be almost psychotically competitive. This is a question that I don't think there's a right or wrong way to answer this at all. But my question for you is, do you love winning or hate losing more?
Yeah. Dude, I hate losing. I used to think it was like a bad thing because my dad, like growing up, like I didn't want to play board games unless I was going to win. I was like just a bad loser, right? Like you're a little kid. I'm like, I don't want to play Monopoly because I know my dad's going to win. I'd like go play putt-putt and freak out. I'm like a freaking 7-year-old throwing a tantrum, right? And I still feel that. Like every time I lose something, I'm like, but I've gotten more graceful at losing and being like, okay, it's fine. It's not a big deal, right? But yeah, definitely hate losing. I hate it. Winning's great. It's fun. But dude, when you lose, there's just something in your gut where you're like, I could have won. I could have done this. Awful.
What is that like? So I think all of us can relate to that experience of at least I can relate to that experience of throwing a temper tantrum, losing a board game with your family or with your friends or something like that. But it feels almost like the wins and the losses are amplified in a cage when everybody's watching you, the lights are on, it's just you and your opponent. What is that like? What is the couple days, couple weeks after a win look like for you versus a loss?
They look very similar. I think the hard part about this sport, and this is something that Coach Danny says all the time, is like you need to be in love with the process. You need to be in love with the training. Because if you're doing it for the 5% that you're actually fighting and you don't get the result, it's going to destroy you, right? So I think the hard part about this sport is you're training so long where you know who the opponent is a lot of times. It's 2 months out. You've got this dreadful weight cut a lot of times. And then you get there, you put everything into it. And if you don't get the result, it's pretty crushing. Luckily, I'm an amateur. So I'm like trying to shift that mindset where it used to be like I have to win. And now it's like, okay, I need to be able to compete at a level that allows me to propel my career forward. So, if I go into a fight and I do great and I fixed a bunch of things that I was really lacking in and I lose and it's not the result that I get, then it's like, all right, man, like I can't control that. But yeah, sorry, long answer for that one.
No, that's awesome.
No, that was perfect. And, it's funny because words and sayings and phrases look good on t-shirts and coffee mugs. Like commonly saying, the only lessons in life are learned from loss. They're not learned from winning all the time. But at the same time, there's a real human element involved too. And you expose that very, very well. Kind of going along that similar mindset, what is going to be that light switch moment for you? You say you want to pursue this as a career. where you make that jump from amateur to professional?
I think it's going to happen after this fight. I've been talking to my coaches a lot about this. It's one of those things too where I'm in a weird weight range where I'm a little bit too small for 170, and it's going to be a tough weight cut to 155. But I think if I'm going to make that jump to pro, I need to make a concerted effort to get to 155, healthy, strong, fast. But I think after this fight, I'll make that jump.
Excellent. You kind of just described my relationship with clothing. I'm I put on a shirt and this size is too small. I put on the next size up and I'm swimming in it. So it's like, God, you can't win.
So to kind of take that next step, Hunter, I'm just curious, without revealing anything that you're working on that that would put you at a competitive disadvantage. Is there any sort of like techniques or strategies or aspects of your game that you're really focusing on to get you to the next level?
That's a good question. I mean, Factory X is known for being a really stand-up striker heavy gym. And so I think that just by elevating the levels in my striking, my wrestling is going to get a lot better as well. As you guys both know, like MMA, it's just different. Like when you're wrestling, you're holding on to the guy the whole time. You can feel their pressure and movement, and you can pick up on those signals if you've been wrestling long enough. And MMA is not like that. Like you need to be able to blend everything together and get them thinking about both. So I can't just be a wrestler in there. I don't want to be a boring, hold the guy down, win a boring decision, right? I want to be either smashing them on the floor or putting them out with my hands. Everything right now. Like obviously working on the submission game as well, but striking heavy for this camp and really trying to elevate my boxing skills. Let me ask you guys something real quick, actually. What have you seen the difference in guys that make it, right? Like the Anthony Smiths out of Omaha, the guys that really elevate to the next level, not just like go pro, win 4, lose 3, and then quit, but like really make it to that next level. What are the differences you guys see?
I've got something that comes to mind here. That's a really good question, Hunter. I've always said that I think having a wrestling background is the most valuable, base that you can have in this sport. And that's coming from a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I think even having a wrestling background is more advantageous in MMA. But you're making me kind of think, almost piggybacking on your point before, the guys who have a strong wrestling background and then can make the transition, have really, really strong boxing. I feel like that's definitely been the blueprint of what we've seen. I mean, you can look at a number of examples of that in the UFC right now. I think Justin Gaethje is a really phenomenal example of that. I think Kamaru Usman is also, in his prime, was a really awesome example of that. But then I think of a guy right now in Dynasty who we actually interviewed recently in Easton Edmond, who he doesn't necessarily have a wrestling background, but he's got such strong striking, and his takedown defense has been phenomenal, and he's able to win those exchanges in the clinch. I think, having a really strong grappling and wrestling background and being able to use your hands and almost falling back on that's been a trend that I've noticed recently. And I don't know if you have a different opinion, Mike.
Actually, I think you nailed it as far as the technique side of it, but being podcaster guy, I've got to needle this thread here and say it's the psychology more than anything else. There is a common denominator amongst all fighters that fight at a high level that we speak with in the Dynasty environment and that I've spoken with in the podcast environment, where they know how to compartmentalize wins, losses, and strategy away from emotion. Like, one of the things I tell musicians all the time, I said, people will listen to the show and they'll be like, well, I'm not quite an MMA fan. I'm like, don't listen for the MMA part of it. Listen to it because of the psychology that goes along with it. You can learn a lot from a high-level fighter by how they carry themselves, basically their overall swagger. A lot of guys see the Conor McGregor denominator and think that's what MMA is all about. And it's like, no, he's a cartoon character. Like compared to some of these other guys that are like sincerely take the art and the sport seriously. So I think psychology plays in as much into it as strategy.
Definitely. And something you said earlier in the interview, Hunter, you said something to the effect of when you step into the ring and there's peace. I mean, I think that that's a really good sign that you're in the right spot. I think I've heard the opposite can be true, almost like your fight or flight kicks in that moment. And there are people who probably feel panic in that moment when you feel peace. So that's to your point, Mike, tying what you said earlier. Yeah, the psychology is a huge aspect of it. If you can even feel comfortable in that spot in the first place.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's scary. Like when you, and then this is what brought me comfort too. Like I would talk to these guys in the UFC and they say the same thing over and over and over again. Man, like I get to the cage. I'm like, what am I doing? This is so dumb. Like I'm about to go fight another dude in a cage. Like this is crazy. I'm in my underwear, right? Like it just sounds ridiculous. Leading up is just the worst, right? Like the whole day, like at least I almost enjoy the weight cuts because at least it gives you something to focus on before the fight. Because you're like, hey, I need to check this off the list. And then I go in and then I get to eat and like that's what I'm focused on. And then the next day I'm fighting, right? I think that's always going to be part of it. Like the guys that have talked to me and said, like AJ Cunningham, UFC guy, he's like, dude, the one time I was really freaked out about fighting was when I wasn't nervous and I lost that fight. I was like, that makes sense. Like you're in this weird state where you're like everything's faster. You don't feel any pain, right? Like you're getting blasted with punches or leg kicks and like for the most part, you're not really feeling it. You can feel the damage kind of, you're aware that you're hurt, but it doesn't feel painful. If that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. And actually, another common denominator, I think, of people who are really successful, and even the folks that Mike and I have been interviewing recently, is a really strong support system as well. What does your support system look like? Who do you have supporting you? What does that look like with you being the star of the show right now?
But yeah, man, that's a good question. I mean, my wife she's incredible. I mean, before it was cool to be like, traditional wife, she was that, right? Like even when we met in college and I would come home from practice and she'd be like at the guy's house, like, cause I lived with like 5 dudes, all athletes, and she'd be there like cooking me breakfast. I'm like, this is insane, right? Like this is marriage material right here. And honestly, like same thing. Like if you can come home to a home of peace instead of like bickering or fighting or whatever else it is, then that's such an advantage for any athlete out there. You come home to peace, you come home to joy. I got my daughter here. It's awesome. And then the other person is definitely my brother. Like my brother, he started this like business that we're doing and was like, hey man, you can come along. It's going to work with your schedule. Like this is the only way I can make this work because it's one of those things where, man, the side that fans don't see is how many guys are struggling, like money wise, right? And not to say like, I get it. Like the UFC is so desirable for a lot of these athletes that it's like, yeah, I mean, if you're not willing to take 12 and 12 or 15 and 15, then like there's 50 other guys that are going to take your spot. But at the same time, like these guys pay 10% to their gym. They pay 10% to their management. They have to go pay for their health care if they get hurt in practice. Like it's just so many things. And so having my brother like bring me along and start this business venture together, like humongous, because now I can kind of rest easy and not have to like go drive Uber for 8 hours a day and then go to practice. You know what I mean?
Right. That kind of lends into 2 other things I wanted to ask. And it's kind of, they're separate, but they're related. In terms of community, what is it about the Midwest, and I say Nebraska and Colorado specifically, where, in your opinion, where we're seeing such high level output of mixed martial artists in our regions?
It's a good question. I think, you see it a lot in California, but I think what keeps people out of California is that just the cost of living is insane. Like you have those guys at Alpha Male in Sacramento, you have a bunch of gyms in LA and things like that. Colorado is getting up there where it's really expensive, but there's so many fighters out here and the elevation is just a game changer. And then honestly, like with Omaha or Nebraska specifically, like you guys feel it. Like you live in Omaha, it's weird. Like when you get there, everybody wants to support you. Everyone's excited because you're from Nebraska or because you're living in Nebraska. So like Crawford, right? He just fought, did a phenomenal job, but he's like a superhero out in Nebraska. I had never even heard of him. Like I'm not super into boxing, but I'd never heard of him before I went out there. And everyone's like, oh, this guy's the best. He's our guy. And so I think you start to feel that and it rubs off on you a little bit because then you're like, man, well, if I've got this crowd or I've got this support system or these fans, like, sure, I can do anything, right? And that's definitely a game changer.
Yes. And that kind of leads into what my next bit of it is what have you noticed has been the biggest changes over the course of the last 5 to 7 years in the sport as it pertains to all of that?
It's good and bad. I think the sport has elevated so much where now you have like this weird generation. It happened in wrestling too. Like, I love Ben Askren. I think he's awesome, but I don't think he sniffs a national championship if he wrestled today in college. And the reason is because everyone adapted to what he invented, that scrambling style. Everyone's gotten better. There's actually money in it now, and there's a path forward to being a professional athlete. Whereas before it was like, hey, you're going to be a professional wrestler? Great. If you're not Jordan Burroughs, you're not making any money. You're going to waste your time. It's going to break your body down, right? And so these guys now see a path where like, okay, well, if I'm a tough wrestler, I could go be a fighter. I could go get some NIL money. The other part that's changed that's really hard specifically for me is like the marketability of some of these guys. Like, it used to just be, I'm a fighter, stoic. I'm going to go to the press conference. I'm going to win. And then everyone's going to know my name, which isn't true anymore. It's like the UFC, if you want to get in there, you have to be 10-0. They don't care if it's 10 tomato cans. Like, honestly, they just don't care, right? They want to be able to tell the audience, this guy's undefeated and he's like a killer and he's fighting this other undefeated guy. And so if you're the, viewer that doesn't really know anything, doesn't know fighting, then you're like, whoa, these guys are both insanely good, even though one of these guys is fighting 10 Russians and the other one's fighting 10 taxi drivers, right? And so it's like the marketability side of UFC or MMA in general, like it takes a different level. You have to be a different level of marketer for yourself. And I'm still working on that. I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't have social media really. I just made an Instagram like 2 months ago because it's kind of required if you want to go up down this route. But I'm like my wife's helping me. She's like, don't post that, post this, whatever it is. And so hopefully these fans, like, especially if they're real fans, they're watching Dynasty on a regular basis, like, go follow these guys on Instagram because it helps so much just from like the UFC gets to see, hey man, this guy's got 10,000 people. They're regularly keeping up with his life. Let's sign him because he's actually got some traction versus some dude that can't speak English and he's got 500 followers. It's like, it's going to be tough to market that guy. So that's the changes I see. Some good, some bad. It's tough.
Absolutely, man. A quote that came to mind when you were talking earlier about you. So you said you recently became a father, correct?
Correct.
You said, what was that 8 months ago? You had an 8-month-old daughter?
Good memory, yeah.
So one of my favorite sayings, even though it might be a little bit corny, I say it probably every day, is how you do one thing is how you do everything. So I'm curious, how has becoming a father shaped your like training and your MMA? And then also if there is any vice versa, how has being a father influenced you or changed the way you view the sport at all too?
Dude, I love that quote because both my coaches, it's not cheesy. Like, both my coaches say that all the time. Danny says it all the time. Mark Montoya says it all the time. It's one of those things that's so true. If the rest of your life is chaotic and you can't get that figured out, then how in the world are you going to put together a performance where you're beating some guy up in the cage? It's just not going to happen. Other than maybe John Jones, but that's about it. But with like having a daughter, like, I think that most of life is just taking on more and more responsibility, especially as a man. I'm pretty traditional in that I think that I am responsible for my family. I'm responsible for protecting them, providing for them. I'm responsible for the trajectory of our lives. And so that goes with having kids. Like, if you have kids, I'm assuming, Mike, do you got kids?
I do, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you can speak to this. Like, it's a different ball game when you have a child. Now you're like, okay, I can't just like screw around on the weekend. I'm not going to go out and, party or drink or whatever. Like, I'm responsible for this little thing. And every minute I'm wasting doing something else is time I'm taking away from spending time with my daughter or building a life for us going forward. And that's heavy. And the more kids, more responsibility. I mean, you get married, same thing. So yeah, dude, like, how you do one thing is how you do all things. Like, if I'm sitting here watching TV and I tell you I want to be a world champion and I'm like eating pudding cups and just wasting the day away, then do I really want to do that? No. If I tell you I want to be a good father and I'm out, hanging out with the boys, joshing around doing nothing. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. It's in the leadership space, they say it's finding your why. You find your why, and it becomes your North Star for everything you do in life. And man, I tell you what, welcome to the fold of the Girl Dad Association. I tell you what, it doesn't get easier, brother. It gets harder, and it's going to make you a better fighter in the long term, because the last thing you want to see is anything bad happen to your little girl. I've got 3 of them, so let's move the target a little bit, and let's throw that target on your opponent. What do you know about your opponent, and how excited are you for this match?
I'm super excited. I love Andrew. Like, we met. Like, he was one of the first guys I met when I first weighed in. My first fight ever was with Dynasty. M4 James was the guy's name. Young dude, cool guy. But yeah, I met Andrew, and he was like just pounding a bag of goldfish right after weigh-ins, and he was like, "Dude, you want some of this?" I was like, "Heck yeah, I want some of that." And so, like, that was cool. Like, he's a good dude, cool guy, big boy. Like, he's one of those guys where you see him with his shirt on, you're kind of like, "Oh, cool," and then he takes his shirt off, and you're like, "Dude, that guy's freaking built. Like, he's thick, right?" So I'm very aware that Andrew has decent wrestling when it comes to just like bullying his opponents, blast doubles, right? I think that is like the best praise I can give to somebody that I don't believe is a collegiate wrestler, correct?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, like really good wrestler. Like, that's how you do it. Like, if you haven't wrestled your whole life and you just blast through somebody in a fight, like, that's super commendable. I know he's a big guy, strong. I'm aware of all those things. I still think that with the progress I've made in my striking, angles, footwork, some of my ground game stuff, I think it's going to be too much for him, but I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a good fight.
With Andrew, you guys actually do have quite a bit in common, I feel like, not only from a style, and you were talking about his physique. I feel like everything you said about Andrew could be said as you too. I mean, you're jacked and you're shredded, and you're like one of those guys when you take your shirt off, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's an animal.
Appreciate it.
And you both only have one loss, and it's to the same opponent. So I guess, how do you see that fight going against Andrew, and what are you looking forward to in that fight the most?
Yeah, that one loss hurts. I mean, I think we both share some camaraderie there where we're like, because we both, I mean, that's a guy I really wanted to beat, and I think that we'll eventually end up fighting again. But with Andrew, I think the fight, I think he's going to be surprised. Like, if you go online and you look up some of my fights on YouTube, right? We all do this before we fight each other. It's like, oh, let me see, is this guy any good, right? My striking just looks terrible because I'm swinging for the fences. I have no footwork going on. I think it's going to be very surprising to him just to be able to try and find me when we're fighting. And I think my hands are definitely going to be there. I think it's going to be, we'll see, right? Like, if we talk a week later and that's not how it goes, I'll be like, boys, like, sorry, it didn't happen. I had to shoot a double leg, whatever. Yeah, I think that's going to be a huge game changer. Factory X has helped a ton with that. Danny is massively into striking. He comes up every once in a while to help me with pad work. So yeah, I think it's going to be the difference for sure.
Living in Colorado, you see yourself fighting with, or like staying affiliated with Dynasty for a while?
We'll see. I'm willing to fight anywhere. I mean, luckily my wife's family lives in Omaha. So it's one of those things where it's not a huge deal. It's like a 7-hour drive, right? Now, if you guys were like in Florida, then we might be talking a little different. But yeah, I love Dynasty. I think it's a great promotion. I think it's run well. I think you guys do a good job commentating. So I would love to keep fighting for them, especially as a pro, if the opportunities present themselves, for sure. I know Colorado Combat's out here. We tried getting a couple cards together or get me a fight with some of those guys, and it just didn't happen. And Henry reached out and was like, all right, I guess I'm going to Omaha again.
Well, let's look to the future then. So put your career in perspective 2 years from now. Where do you see yourself?
That's a good question. I don't know if this is too far reaching. I see a time clock just because I'm already 27. That feels old. I know it's not super old. Like, I see some of these guys in their prime, but at the same time, like, I'm thinking so far ahead where it's like, okay, I need to be at the next level, i.e. a big professional promotion. before I'm 30 years old to really try and do what I want to do in the sport. And that's kind of the time frame I'm giving myself. So I think declaring pro before I'm 28 after this fight, you know, getting there as quick as possible while also making sure that I'm smart, making sure my technique is all dialed in before I make that jump. 2 years from now, I would like to be on the cusp, 7-0, looking towards the next chapter.
So, my closing question that I ask every single guest that is a part of the show is, given your experience and your perspectives and everything you have in front of you, what's your advice through your eyes, through your experience, for making the world a better place tomorrow than what it is today?
Man, okay, good question. I think people nowadays are obsessed with wanting to change the world in some massive way. And so then they forget, like what we talked about, Kaleb, where it's like you forget that you need to get your life in order before you go take on these massive things in front of you, right? So I love Jordan Peterson. That dude has some great wisdom. I love a lot of these military guys, and a lot of things they say that is very much in common with one another is like, get up and make your bed. Meaning, get up, do the little things that is going to set your day on the right trajectory. And then you can go take on those massive goals, because like all of us loves, like, man, superhero movies are freaking awesome because it's like, man, he's born with this skill and he goes and he has this awesome thing that he takes on, or he goes and takes on the bad guy, right? But it's like, that's not real life. Like, real life is every single day you need to be disciplined enough to get 1% better so that you can be ready for that giant moment when it presents itself. You know what I mean? So that would be my advice.
Love it. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Friday, November 21st, 2025, Pinnacle Bank Arena in Lincoln, Nebraska, Seasons Beatings, Dynasty Combat Sports. You will hear myself and Kaleb behind the pay-per-view desk, and you will see this young man putting on a show. I'm excited for it.
Hunter, you're the man. It's great to get to know you, and look forward to seeing you compete here in November.
Guys, thanks for having me.
Where can everybody find you online, sir?
Man, well, like I said before, Instagram is the bane of my existence. So go follow me on there and like every picture. Doesn't matter how old it is. Won't creep me out. Hunter Harrison MMA. I made it super simple. So just go follow me on there and like everything. Do me a favor.
Good. See, that was marketing guy Mike trying to help you out.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I was like waiting for that question. Oh, come on. So I appreciate it.
Hunter Harrison, thank you so much for doing the podcast. The world is a much better place with you in it, my friend.
Thank you, boys. I appreciate having me on.